Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar about COSMO Alpaca. Today we will focus on our GitHub side. You might know that COSMO Alpaca supports GitHub and Azure DevOps, and in today's webinar we will talk about GitHub, but everything which I'll show you for GitHub, or most of the things, will work also on Azure DevOps, and currently also Azure DevOps has some additional features which are not supported at GitHub at the moment, but will be supported in the future. From my side, I'm Patrick Schiefer. I'm one of the developers from COSMO Alpaca. I'm also a Microsoft MVP and working together with Freddy on improving Microsoft ALGO and so to support more and more COSMO Alpaca features. So if you don't know what COSMO Alpaca is, you may want to know which features we handle. So we have quality assurance. We are from developers for developers. We have a ready-to-use system everywhere and every time. We don't have any restrictions to any operating system. So you can use COSMO Alpaca on your Mac system or your Linux system and run your Business Central development environment wherever you want. We have CI/CD processes. You don't need any maintenance on your side anymore. Because we keep your Business Central development environments up and running. We have project templates to fast start a new project for you. Free files code extension, which is supporting your development process, release management, predefined Business Central environments, which is one of our most important feature from COSMO Alpaca. Sum it up, we have more time for your core tasks because COSMO Alpaca just works and helps you to improve everything inside of your project. Let's see how you can get started with COSMO Alpaca. So when you go to to your VS Code extension, the first thing you have to do is to install COSMO Alpaca. If you want to use the GitHub features, you have to use our preview extension, which is still in preview, but will somehow, when next year, change from previous state to official release. This preview extension will then support GitHub and Azure DevOps. The current release only supports Azure DevOps. So for GitHub at the moment, you use the preview extension. Then when you first time use it and you switch to COSMO Alpaca, you may get asked for a login. Then you have to log in with your GitHub user. It doesn't ask me because I'm already logged in. And then you have to choose between the technical and the functional view, which means the technical view is a sidebar view, which enables you to develop and have the COSMO Alpaca view on the side. And the functional view is a full screen view inside of VS Code, so that you have a little bit more rooms and a little bit better usability for non-technical people. So I choose the technical side because I'm technical. And then you have to choose if you want to use GitHub or Azure DevOps. You can change it later. When I use GitHub, it already loads my GitHub organizations. I have a filter for my favorite organizations because I doesn't want to show my whole organization tree inside of the webinar. That's why I have a filter. And that's the first thing we want to have a look at. When you right click on an organization, you can set this organization as a favorite and then just switch via the filter icon. Also to mention here, you can switch directly to the Azure DevOps view. So our first feature is that we can handle our GitHub projects and organizations directly via VS Code, and I will show you how you can get started with a new GitHub project. So when you have your organization here, you can just click on Create ALGO repository, and then you can choose between the Microsoft default templates and the Alpaca BTE template. If you want to use the whole Alpaca using Alpaca containers, then you have to choose Alpaca BTE. When you just want to use plain ALGO plus development environments, then you can choose Microsoft PT or Microsoft App Source. There might also be an Alpaca App Source template in the future, but it's not completed yet. So then you have to name your repository. I call it webinar. You have to choose if your repository is private or public. I choose for a private one, and then the repository is already created in the background. I got the message, repository was created successful, and when I wait a few seconds, the repository is already here, and I can just open it in my browser, and I have an ALGO repository enhanced with Alpaca features you can see here, and we have also some scripts from COSMO Alpaca here, and then we are ready to start. When you're familiar with ALGO, you might know that there are beneath the projects you have apps. When you start a new repository, you don't have any apps inside there, then you can just click here on apps, and you can create an ALGO app from here directly. So we start with I call it webinar app 123 because I'm not sure if I used webinar app already in my environment, because I have an environment running which I show you later where we want to install. After that, we can set the publisher for our app, and we also can add an ID range, which is then applied to the app JSON. Also, that is running in the background. The app is created, and after a few seconds, it will pop up here. But in the meanwhile, we want to start developing, and that will be done when we just click on clone here, and we want to clone our repository. So the cloning has started. I can open it. Will ask me if I want to choose the workspace, and now I'm ready to go. We see the app is not here yet because the workflow which is creating the app is not done yet. We can have a look in the browser. Yeah, it's because our initial commit run is still running. I will stop it so that we have resources for the second workflow. I'm using a free account where you can only run one pipeline at once. So we have to wait a few seconds till the initial commit is done. Then the create app will be triggered. So the action is done. So, and now the create app is also done. I can now refresh my GitHub repository locally, and then I have already here my app, and I can start developing. So, but I have an empty launch JSON here, which might be a problem because I need an environment to launch my code or to launch my app. So the first thing which we might do here is that we click on containers, and we want to create a container for our environment. So we can just name the container here. It reads some settings. It takes a few seconds, and then it will create the container. And the container is taking the settings out of the repository and creates the container the same way as it would be done in the pipelines. So the pipeline containers and the development containers are the same. And you can make differences if you want, but basically they are using the same settings. Our container is starting, which takes between 5 to 15 minutes according to the settings you have done. But we can already see it here. And normally we would now wait till the container is done, and then we would create a launch JSON. Because I don't want to wait, I've already started a container before we started with the workshop. So when we right click on a container, we have many options, and one of it is to create a launch JSON. So first of all, the launch JSON is filled completely, so I have my container settings here. I have some errors and warnings here because I forgot to install the IL language. I used a plain VS Code without any extensions for my workshop. That's why we don't have any launch configuration or something like that here. So when the installation is done, we can go back and create the launch JSON again. And the launch JSON is done, and it asks me also to download IL symbols for the active workspace folder. I can choose this, or I just download it via download symbols. Then it will just download the symbols, as you know, and it's taken from the container, and you're ready to go and ready to start using the online environment. So we are also capable to launch it now, and it will just open up a web client inside of our COSMO Alpaca enterprise environment. The enterprise environment is just for everyone except Cosmo Consult, so it's also for base app contributions and so on. And we have here container ID, which is unique, and then we have to log in. And the username is the GitHub user, the default username, but for the password, we create a password which is shown here, but you can also just right click on the container, copy password, and then paste it in here. And then you will get your VS Code extension, your extension from VS Code installed in the Business Central container, and you can start testing your current changes. The container is running for the first time. That's why the web client also takes some second to warm up. But when it's warmed up, it's performing like a normal container on your side. Oh, there is a problem with Asia ID. In every of the containers, also if you have local containers, there is a missing configuration which breaks the debugger. So when we have a look at, I should maybe change my environment to English. But here we have our app. It's somewhere here. Webinar app 123 is installed, and we can now test our changes. And then we can merge it and so on, like you would do it with GitHub anyway. So, but we want to have a look at our container, and it is not started yet. But we can check just by right-click open log why it's not started or what it is doing. So we can have a look at some details of the container. and we see the container starting. It is the same container as you would start locally, so you have the same messages in here, except if you have set up some Alpaca features, then you would have additional logs inside here from COSMO Alpaca. And then if you have any troubles, you can troubleshoot using the log. Or if you want to set up additional things, we have different possibilities to interact with the container. First of all is the open terminal functionality. Using the open terminal functionality, you get an SSH connection directly inside of the container, and it will give you a PowerShell inside of the container, and then you can just do anything you want inside of the container, which is good if you want to change any settings inside of the container or something like that. If you want to install additional apps, you can do it using the SSH connection. So now I'm in the container. We can see it when I go to the root. We have here the run, which is the main folder in Business Central containers. And if you run prompt, we can, for example, get nav server instance, and it will list us the instances, and we have an instance which is called PC. We can see the apps and so on, so we have full root access to the container. We have also the possibility to open a file share, which is also just an SSH connection inside of the container, which will open us a VS Code extension inside of the container, where we can then upload and download files directly in VS Code inside of the container. And we have some additional features for the base app development. And as I already said at the beginning, the VS Code extension is for free, but the container runtime will cost a little bit. So we have a usage-based, hourly-based price, which is €1 per hour, except for Microsoft partners. Microsoft partners have 90 cents per hour of container runtime. And we have some features which can save you much money. We have an auto stop feature which stops the container in your time zone daily at 6 p.m. So the default setting is daily stop at 6 p.m. You can change this default setting in the Alpaca settings in the VS Code, and you can also set different modes for the auto stop. So you can deactivate the auto stop, or you can deactivate it just once. So it will not stop the container today, but tomorrow it will stop again. And we also have some auto start modes. If you have an auto start, if you want to auto start your container, you have different options. You can start the container on a daily basis, on a weekdays only, or just tomorrow. Then it will start before you. Then you can start your container before you start working, and it will already be there when you start working. The default value for auto start is deactivated, so it will not start automatically when you don't want it. Which I forgot what I forgot to mention is, if you have any questions, first just use the question card in GoToWebinar, and I will try to have a look at the questions from time to time and answer it directly. So far for the container features. When we jump back to our project. We have also some different options inside here. First option which we want to have a look at is the environments option. So we have here the possibility to add environments. You can add here a SaaS environment if you want. So I already prepared a SaaS environment where we can host some things. Then we can enable continuous deployment or just manual deployment. We will now use manual deployment. Continuous deployment would mean that every pipeline which is running automatically deploys directly in the environment. We don't want to activate this now. We just want to publish manually. So what is happening? We also have here a pipeline which is starting, and it just adds a new environment in the, I think it's ALGO settings. No, it's not ALGO settings, it's here. So you have here now new environment, and the connection data is stored in secrets in GitHub. Yeah. So this environment is already up and running. We don't have an app which we can publish now. We need to wait till the pipeline is done. So when this pipeline is done, we can publish our app. But in the meanwhile, we will have a look at releases. You can create releases in VS Code, but before we create a release, we will start with two things. The first of it, I will install GitHub Copilot because our features are integrated with GitHub Copilot if it is installed. So when you start developing, you can just create a new branch like you would do it anyway in Git. I develop a feature which is called feature 1, and then I just add a page extension. I will add something to customer card. Hello from COSMO Alpaca. Okay, we test our feature. Just have a look if it is working. Hello from COSMO Alpaca. Yes, it's working, so we can now go back and commit our changes. So we want to commit our changes. When we push it, we can then create a pull request. As we can see, when everything is set up fine, it already asks to create a pull request here. But if you don't get this message, you can just click here on branches. And we have here a branch called feature 1. And we can create a pull request from here and suggest some values. And here we can generate a message for our pull request automatically with Copilot. And then we create this pull request. And now this pull request is ready to be reviewed. And we can also merge it directly from VS Code. So we don't have to leave VS Code. Anyway, we can do everything we want directly in VS Code. Yeah. so you don't have two systems which you have to switch between. And when you have done everything, you can just merge it. So I want to squash it. So now we have merged this, and the workflow would trigger again, but I skipped this. Just this. And the first workflow is still running. Let's see what the workflow is doing. So we have basically, most of it is basic ALGO. So we have the initialization, check for updates, build, deliver, deploy, and so on. Is from ALGO. We have two custom steps, which is COSMO create Alpaca container and COSMO remove Alpaca container. And the pipeline is more or less the basic pipeline from ALGO, but we changed every communication with containers to Alpaca containers. So here, somewhere here, we are waiting for the container. So we have the log of the container here. And when the container is started, it would publish the app. And when the app is published and so on, then the pipeline will finish. Yeah. Before we jump to releases, because this pipeline will still, no, it will be finished in a few seconds, then we wait. Okay. It's almost there. When we then have the app, we will be able to deploy the app to our environment. This happens via the environment tab here, and you can just click on deploy release to this environment. Then you can choose which you want to use. I want to use the latest, and that's everything I have to do. Now again, a workflow is triggered, and we can see it here. We have now here the publish to environment workflow, which is currently initializing, and in the meanwhile, our pipeline is ready. And when we scroll down a little bit, we have some warnings from our code. But we have here an app which we can download from here, or we can just use it via the development, via the deployment, which I already triggered. So let's see how far it is. What it will do is it just reads the settings from your environment, and then it will just trigger the automation API for Business Central, and then it will install the app like you would do it via the BTA installation. You can see here is the API called, and you can check everything it does, and then when it will. So this is my online environment, and when the publish is done, we can see it inside here. So let's see, it's not here yet. Maybe it's already in the installation status. Yeah, we have already the webinar app 123 here in progress, and the installation is happening in the background. So this takes a few moments for Business Central to process. When it is processed, the pipeline will finish, and then we will see the app installed. So that's the main process. You can set up as much environments as you want, and then you can install your apps directly via this environment in Alpaca. Okay, but for now we have just a basic container which includes all apps from Microsoft, but you may have some dependencies on other apps, and therefore you have to config a little bit. Let's have a look at the configuration of COSMO Alpaca. So COSMO Alpaca basically inherits the configuration from ALGO, but we have some additional possibilities inside of our Alpaca JSON. And let's see what possibilities we have. So first of all, I switch to the editing mode. Let's open the Alpaca JSON. And here we can add some container configurations. And we can have different configurations. For example, we can have a configuration which is called current, which just creates a container for the current version, which is inheriting from a workflow. So if you use test current, which is the workflow we just executed in the actions, then every settings from the test current is inherited, and you can override some things here. You can override the version. You can here override as many places as you want. So if you just want the latest 25, then you took 25 here. If you want 25.1, you take 25.1, and so on. You can specify as much information as you want, or as less as you need. But you can also override the country, for example, here. And everything about the container you can override here. But the most important thing inside here is that you can add artifacts in here. So you can add, for example, app artifacts here, which you want to install. If you add artifacts here, then everything which is inside this zip file, it's a zip file which we can download, will be installed in the container. So if you have 10 apps you want to install, you can either have one zip file where every of these 10 apps is inside, or you have a zip file per app, then you would have more entries inside here. And when we specify it like this, it will be installed inside of the container. We can also see it here inside of my prepared container when we switch here to the log. Hopefully we see the whole log, because this container is running for a while. Let's see if we find the beginning of the log. Yeah, here's the beginning of the log. We see the Microsoft apps and so on. And then we see that there's an app downloaded and installed, and that this can be used as a dependency in your development then. But you can also define different container configurations here. For example, you can also have a configuration which is called Next Minor, which will use the Next Minor version from Business Central. And then you can do something like that and use another zip file here, for example, apps Next Minor, if they are not compatible. If they're compatible, you have at both the same apps, and to not have to configure everything on everything twice or more often, we also have a default configuration. So you can also have a configuration which is called default, and this is used for every other configuration as parent. So everything you define in the default configuration will be used also for the other configuration. So basically, you can move everything up here, and then it will maybe not the version, because then we have the version changed down there. We may use the same country for every configuration. For the artifacts, we support different types of artifacts. The basic type of artifact is apps, but we also support installing fonts, or we support to install rapid start packages or database backups, and we also support to differ between build containers and development containers. So, for example, I have here added some fonts, and have here the target font, which means they will be handled as fonts. And I don't need any fonts when I build an app. That's why I added here an ignore in. And via the ignore in, you can set if it's executed in build or if it's executed in development containers. And yeah, for example, for the fonts, I only wanted to use in the development containers. One thing which will come in the future, which is not available yet, when we create containers, containers, we now have here the plus, but there will be a right-click option where you then can choose between these different configurations. We already have this on Azure DevOps, so you can choose different configurations. It's also very useful if you have different countries to support. Then you can just have default configuration where you have defined all your apps, and then you have configurations for the different countries you're working with. Where one very common use case is that you use configuration with this backup files. So I have one configuration which would call current with pack. It will inherit from the current. So this one does not inherit from basic. This one does inherit from current, and takes everything from the current and adds a backup to the container. Containers support backups up to 10 gigabyte. This is a limitation of SQL Server Express. So we have SQL Server Express running in the container. That's just because it's inside of the Microsoft Basic containers. You have a SQL Server Express, and the SQL Server Express has a limit on 10 gigabytes. You can also use backups from SaaS environments, and then you can create your containers using backups. For the future, we will also have some additional setup possibilities, which we already have on Azure DevOps. On Azure DevOps, we already have the possibility to add scripts to your container. If you want to execute scripts every time you start a container, then you can just add it to the repository. This might come in the future, and what we also have on Azure DevOps, but not on GitHub at the moment, is that you can start a companion container, which means you start a second container which is connected to your Business Central container, where you have additional software, like you have an web shop or something like that, or any other service you want to host in an additional container and you might need for development. So we will just have one look again if the actions are now done. Yeah, the publish action is now done. So now we should see in our VS Code extension that it is in our Business Central environment that it is completed, and it's also installed now here. So everything is up and running. And the last thing which we might want to do is we want to create a release. So we can here click on create release. I want to use 1, 2, 3. I want to increase the release number of the main branch by 1. I don't want the release branch, and now a release is triggered in the background. When we refresh here, it should already show up in a few seconds. The new release. It's not done yet. Yeah, we have also the GitHub actions directly here in VS Code. So we can also have a look inside here, and here we have create release. There should be one run, and we see also what it is doing in the background. And we can also from here jump to the browser and see the whole log. So we have the create release. Okay, the create release is now done, and now the artifact is uploaded somewhere. So basically now when we go back to COSMO Alpaca, we will see the release inside here. And we see the tag here, and we can also have a look at the GitHub release. So we have the release notes here with the change log and everything. Okay. That's more or less the features from COSMO Alpaca. We will jump back to the presentation. Any questions so far? I see one question, which is, can we easily publish and install artifacts from COSMO JSON file to our development container? So the COSMO JSON, for those who don't know, is the equivalent for the Alpaca JSON on GitHub, on Azure DevOps. We just wanted to rebrand it in GitHub to Alpaca JSON. It looks also a little bit different than the Alpaca JSON because we decided to make a more advanced design of the JSON file. But to answer the question, no, at the moment it's not possible to publish apps from the COSMO JSON directly to the container. We have this in our backlog, but at the moment priority is more on GitHub than on Azure DevOps. But yeah, many people asking for this feature, so it might be there somewhere in the future, but not yet. Okay, any other questions? First of all, I already said the VS Code extension is totally for free, but if you want to run containers, you have to pay for it. And we give you 50 hours free container runtime if you want to try out COSMO Alpaca. And we are also, I already mentioned it at the beginning, we are also free for base app contribution. So if you want to contribute to the base app, COSMO Alpaca is also totally for free. If you want to have monthly updates from our COSMO Alpaca product, you can just subscribe to the Alpaca Cafe, which is a monthly meeting. And there we give the latest news to everything related to COSMO Alpaca. There we also handle GitHub and Azure DevOps, so you might see features which are also related to Azure DevOps there. I wish you a great Christmas time, and we hopefully see you next year in one of our COSMO Alpaca Cafe meetings. And I wish you a nice day and a great new year.